This is, okay, Minuteman Media, we are going to start. Okay, this is the April 25th, 2022 meeting of the Select Board. And before we start with our regular business, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Deborah Stark, who suddenly passed away last week. This is a shock to the whole community. Deborah was the founder and owner of Deborah's Natural Gourmet, the anchor store in West Concord. And many, many people were privileged to know her. And she was an amazing community activist. And we'll have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. And we will now have the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the town accountant warrant of April 14th, 2022, Sunday entertainment license for the Concord Orchestra at 51 Walden Street on May 22nd, and one-day liquor licenses for the Friends of Sleepy Hollow and Hive LLC at Neshoba Brook School for a school community event, and two proclamations. One for Public Safety Telecommunicators Week of April 10th through 16th, and one for Professional Municipal Clerks Week for May 1st through 7th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And we really want to thank both of those groups, the dispatcher group and the town clerk's office, for a very busy year with a lot getting done in your departments. Thank you. We will now go to the town manager's report.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. There are two reports in your packet this evening. I wanted to mention that Deputy Town Manager Kate Hodges, her last day was on Friday, April 15th. She has taken up the position of Lancaster Town Administrator, and I believe today was her first day. So we wish her well. I also noted, I noted 2 weeks in a row, Kelly Hebert is the interim assistant town manager. I guess putting her in 2 weeks in a row denotes my excitement to have some help in the office. Kelly actually had been working with our human resources department on the classification and compensation plan and had some time available. So it's been helpful to have her take on this assignment on a part-time basis. Her experience is noted in the report. She has extensive experience working in local government and again, has been very helpful to us the last couple of weeks. We do have two new public safety dispatchers who joined us recently, Elle Brennan and Samantha Simpson. I mentioned that the spring tree planting initiative is underway and we expect to plant over 35 trees as a part of the town-funded program in public rights-of-way. We're gearing up for the water quality testing beginning in the next couple of weeks at White Pond. We have a new staff member in our Economic Vitality and Tourism Division, Cindy Keene. She is a part-time administrative assistant. Also, news out of Economic Vitality and Tourism. There's a note that division, planning and land management staff and town manager's office staff are working on a RFP for a seasonal trolley service. This is something, this would connect points of interest with both Concord Center and West Concord, something that has been in the works for a couple of years and really hasn't made any progress because of the pandemic. We're looking to bring an RFP to you sometime next month, probably the end of next month. We're thinking we will issue it. We have enough information to have a general sense of what the cost will be. So we're thinking we'll issue it and bring the results back to you to talk about. This is something that we potentially would like to use some of the ARPA funds as seed money. And this program would be particularly helpful from a data gathering perspective to help us apply for grants in the future. There are a number of grants for this type of activity, but we need the ridership data. So that would be very helpful. Some information in here about food truck discussions we've been having. This is probably the hottest topic amongst town staff. There's a lot of interest in having more use of food trucks. Right now, they're only permitted at on private property or town-owned land when associated with a town event such as Jazz Fest and Porch Fest. This will continue for the next year, but potentially the planning board might consider a zoning bylaw amendment for next year's annual town meeting to allow food trucks as an accessory or temporary use. Now, the library was featured in the spring issue of Discover Concord magazine. The children's library is very popular. They have music concerts attended by 80 to 110 people most recently. A note about thanks to former library director Barbara Powell, who has been working diligently to catalog the book collection left to the library, Dick and Doris Kearns Goodwin, their book collection, which will be available in the Goodwin Forum in the library. That's the large meeting room that is, I think, just about ready to be opened to the public, if not already. Some staffing changes at the library. Noted Carrie Stowe was appointed to the position of staff librarian in teen services. We have a new library assistant, and we had the departure of a longtime employee, Al Rodriguez, and he was very well loved by all of the staff there. Another quick note, we were advised that Hanscom Field is expecting significant increase in general aviation air traffic in June as a result of the U.S. Open Championship Golf Tournament, which will be held June 13 to 19. So we do expect probably to hear from some residents that are in the area. Another interesting note, one of our firefighters, Samantha McChesney, participated in the Tough Ruck event the day before Patriots Day, or 2 days before Patriots Day. This is a marathon, a literal marathon, and she decided to compete wearing her full turnout gear. And I happened to see her when I was coming into town. That was quite a sight to see. So 26.2 miles wearing her turnout gear.
How much does that gear weigh?
Well, I can tell you back in my early days, I got dressed up in turnout gear and I felt like it weighed about as much as I did. This was a long time ago, but just the helmet itself is very, very heavy. She finished in just over 7 hours, so that was quite impressive. A couple other notes, we have a new phone system at the townhouse, not at the townhouse, throughout the town organization. It provides 30% more line availability for incoming and outgoing calls. And most importantly, it has a soft phone application for computers and mobile devices. So this is particularly helpful for people who are working remotely and have come accustomed to talking to people through their computer. So you can actually port your phone over to your laptop. So that's particularly helpful. There's a note in here about the 5G upgrade policy. We are soliciting comments through May 13th, and that information can be found on the web. So we're hoping to get some feedback on the plan or the policy that was presented to you a couple of weeks ago. So I think I guess the last thing that I will mention, and I know the board already knows this, but the governor has approved the Land and Water Conservation Fund application submitted by Natural Resources for $500,000 for the Assabet River Bluff project. The application now has to go to the National Park Service, but we are hopeful that we will be awarded that grant. So that would be terrific news for that particular project. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
That's terrific. That's terrific news on the grant. How has the phone service been going in terms of implementation? I think we're still able to reach you, but have you had any hiccups with it? Or
We definitely have had hiccups. I believe the day that we cut over, we had about a dozen staff from the vendor on site, so we did have a lot of support. The IT director reported, I think it was just at this meeting's morning, that there were about 90 bugs that were logged initially, and they're down to 15. He had some funny information about, there were some people that really were upset. We had some really old equipment that had to be replaced, and but everything seems to be going well. But it was definitely a couple of days that some people's service was interrupted. But now I don't think anybody even notices a difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be some of that, with a major transition like that. So it sounds like it's going relatively well.
Yeah.
Just, I think in the wake of Kate Hars's departure, I'm just curious about the current status of the Giroux site work as well as the White Pond work. And, is there any update on that, or maybe we just schedule getting a more comprehensive update at some point?
We will put something in this week's weekly report. I asked Ryan Orr, who is our facilities director, he is leading up those projects now in Kate's departure. He was working with Kate all along, so he's very familiar with that. He's putting some information together, so I will put that in the report this week. And if you would like to have a more in-depth discussion about that, we can do that.
I mean, maybe a review of all of these, kind of capital projects that are underway. I mean, there's the Bruce Freeman.
Sure.
Presumably also after town meeting, we'll have a couple of new ones coming online. Okay.
Other questions? I think I have a question about the grant. It's wonderful news. Can you remind us, Carrie, what the funding of Assabet Bluff would be now from the different sources, now that assuming we get the grant, because it's now that it's a more sure thing. And I'm looking I had a handout on it, but I don't know if I have. But I know in a previous meeting, we had some questions about what would happen since the fundraising's going really well and if we have the grant.
Linda looks like she's ready to say
All right,
something.
Linda, whoever can answer.
Well, as I understand it, this grant, once it's approved, and it has been approved by the governor, we're almost 99.9% sure that it will be forthcoming once it's approved by the National Park Service. They don't award more grants than the money that's available to the state for this category.
Right.
So in terms of the overall amounts for the grant, this amount, my understanding is that this amount has to be based on the conditions of the grant. This money in Article 26, in Article 25, excuse me.
25, right.
Yeah, will need to be held in
Escrow,
so to speak,
Yeah.
because of the conditions of the grant. The town cannot spend that money prior to the grant funds
Right.
technically being awarded. But this grant fund is reimbursable, and then will come back, the town will be,
That's my question. The town will be reimbursed at that time, or is it going to be split between the fundraising organizations and the town?
so the total amount of committed funds, and I don't have that.
Yeah, I found it, so,
Okay, is a combination of the $500,000 grant and, my understanding is over 150 private donations that have
that's
been made.
amazing, yeah.
Okay, those numbers don't look,
This might be out of date.
yeah, these numbers do not look correct to me.
Okay,
Sorry, I don't have that with me at the moment.
okay.
So I do have,
Do you have the recent chart, the most recent chart?
I do. I have a copy of the presentation that's going to be made at town meeting, and it is showing fundraising, grant, and town funds, a total of $1,150,000. and it's not broken out any more definitive than that.
Okay, well, I still don't totally understand how it's going to work. So maybe by the time we get to our meeting before town meeting, we can discuss this again, if that's all right.
So I think if it's possible, perhaps once the handout that's been prepared by, I guess, the department is finalized, perhaps that could be sent to us for FYI.
That would be wonderful.
And I think that would be very helpful.
Right, because we do have this chart, and it was pretty good. It's dated April 6th, but now things need to be updated on it. That's got a total of 1.2 million for the donations plus the grant. And I still don't totally understand how the reimbursement would work. So be great to find that out. Henry, thank you for rushing over here after your other meeting.
Well, I was able, while you were waiting for me, I was able to get a wine and beer license in Lexington for Fiorella's.
Oh, okay. So we're just.
Quick work.
Yeah, we're just finishing the town manager's report. Do you have any questions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll pass this over to get signed. Okay, we're moving on then to the chair's remarks. So as everyone knows, town meeting is Sunday, May 1st, and probably Monday, May 2nd. So it's 1 p.m. on Sunday and 7 p.m. on Monday at the high school. Also, the day before that, we have two exciting events. From 10 to 2 at the library is the Concord Cooler Climate Festival. And then at 2 p.m. at Harvey Wheeler, there is a celebration for 3 years' worth of honored citizens of the year. This year, we are going to be honoring Jonathan Kais, Elise Woodward, and Joanne Gibson. So please try to attend all these fun events. And also in the packet is a QR code and a website for the housing production plan. We're asking all residents to participate in a 10-minute survey on housing production. And we will now go to our first public hearing, which is an application for a new license from Emerson Umbrella. Jerry, if you'd like to join us.
So move to open the public hearing for the application of a new license filed by Emerson Umbrella Incorporated for the on-premise consumption of wine and malt beverages.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Sherry, you want to tell us briefly about this?
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate the work that the selectmen have done, the select board, apologies, and town meeting approved several years ago. I'd like to point out Michael Lawson, who did a lot of work on this. I believe we applied for a full liquor license in 2016, and because understanding of how the town's allotment of licenses go, we pulled back. The main goal on our part was, I know it's a lot of work for the board to approve all the licenses, the daily licenses that we do year after year, month after month, and it's a lot of work on our part as well. So the warrant article 50 from 2 years ago was welcomed by us and hopefully by you. Happy to answer any questions. We've made our application and ready to.
Okay, so you're resubmitting now that you won't have to go through all those daily liquor, one day.
Right now, we apply for daily liquor licenses
Right.
for everything we do. So if we have an event like a gala, we apply for a license. We also have concessions at our performing arts. So we might have a production that is 3 nights a week, 4 weeks in a row, and we apply for a license for each individual
Right,
performance
right.
of that. So it's a lot of work for you guys to approve it. It's a lot of work for us to kind of make all those applications.
Okay. Questions? Linda?
Yeah, thank you. So in reviewing the application, I noticed a few inconsistencies, or at least things that I was having difficulty tracking. And perhaps it has to do when you originally applied as to now coming in. But I saw the name of Brian Baruta, is it, as the manager of record. But then I also saw Catherine Regan's name as manager of record. So, but I didn't see her name on the application per se. I saw her name somewhere else in terms of.
Both Brian Baruta, who is our director of performing arts and manages the concessions and most of the events that take place here, and Kathy Regan, who's the assistant program director of performing arts, are both here on Zoom somewhere. And happy to answer questions if you can, if they can. Brian Baruta is the manager of record, and I believe that the application calls for a backup. So Kathy would be that backup manager.
Okay. So some of that may not be as clear as you're stating it in terms of how it's recorded on the application itself. So that the other thing is that the application, the AB Control Board, the Alcohol Beverage Control Board, has a drop-down menu for categories that you're applying for. And your application checked wine and malt beverages with cordials and liqueurs permit. And in fact, I don't believe our state legislation that was approved includes that category.
Yeah.
So there's another problem with the
Okay, so we can change that.
on the application.
So
Linda, I think maybe the inconsistency you saw was perhaps the letter from the police department.
Correct.
And so it really wasn't their application that had any inconsistency. I think it was the police department letter identified somebody else as it identified the backup as the person of record.
But on the application, she wasn't identified.
Right, but I don't think that that's an issue for Emerson Umbrella. It's just I think it was just the police department was checking out anybody that was listed and just identified them as the manager. So I don't know that that's a concern with the application per se.
Okay. Well, in the past, we have had a backup manager identified. So I just want to make sure that, we have all the correct information so that you're in good shape too, going
Appreciate
forward.
it.
Okay, no, you're right. Sorry. I'm
Right.
now seeing this
They
is
both
inconsistent.
are on there.
Yeah,
I do
both as the
remember having
manager.
the same
Sorry.
question.
I'd seen it up above in one way and here it was again.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think if the board decides to approve this, if you could just go back with Chris Carmody and straighten out all the paperwork. So it's, because my other question that Linda just brought up, does that mean you would change it to just a beer and wine license and take out the part about the cordials, or are you going to?
We typically only serve beer and wine. There's an occasion at a gala or something where we'll bring a special drink in. But I did read in the legislation, I think it's listed as malt and
Wine
wine.
and malt.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
So we'll comply with,
okay,
we're not going to go back to the legislature.
right.
No, it only took us a couple years, 3 years maybe, to get that all squared away. Okay.
Linda, you're all set? Or you have more questions?
I can come back to them. I'll let someone else.
Okay,
I
Matt?
have a question, which is the Emerson Umbrella Incorporated. I mean, I thought it was now the Umbrella Center for the Arts. Is that sort of a DBA?
Yeah, we go by the umbrella. We rebranded that 8
But
years
it's not,
ago.
you didn't do a legal name
No,
change.
we're still registered as the Umbrella Inc. Or
Okay.
Emerson Umbrella Inc. Sorry.
All right, thanks.
My question is, the description of premises, which lists 60,000 square feet, which I assume is the entire building. And so is it your intention that alcoholic beverages be served any place in the building by anybody in the building to anybody else who happens to be in the building? I don't see anything about like where or who or how the beverages would be served. Usually, in most places, there's a bar or a room or a lounge or something, but is it your intention, like when somebody has a show or something in their studio, that they would then be serving beer and wine to the people who come And with these people, we usually ask that people be tip certified who are serving.
Yep.
Are these tip certified artists that you have in your umbrella?
How could I know? Well, let me talk about the 60,000 square feet, first of all. The building, if you can think about it in two sections, one is the original school building. That's all the classrooms that were converted into studios. That's basically studios and a few, our ceramics program and some service areas. The new portion of the building is a gallery, lobby space, the theaters and the classrooms. That's predominantly where we would serve, mostly in the gallery, the lobby. The concession stand opens up to the lobby, and then patrons are allowed to take. So I think we're describing the entire building here, not that we would have events in the class, in the individual studios.
I don't have a problem with that. I think you should be able to serve alcoholic beverages any place. But
Well, maybe
this is a little. This is a kind of an unusual arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I know that when there've been open studios, there has been alcohol served in the open studios, but I think that there was maybe a one-day license for that or something for those events.
That might be an individual artist in their individual studio.
Yeah, and it's not for money usually, right? So usually the circumstances are quite a bit different in this. I wanted to go to the police department letter concerns because I'm not 100% sure I agree, but they're suggesting that if you're close to the maximum capacity, which is 200 to 250 people, I assume they mean by the theater capacity.
The theater capacity is 300.
300, so that you would hire a police detail. But it would just seem like, it would be fairly routine that hopefully, if you're successful operation, that you are, filling the house, or maybe not filling the house, but, getting a majority of the seats. And I just didn't know. I mean, it seemed to me that a theater, I'm just trying to recall when I saw a police detail at a theater, it's not that common.
Well, we've never had it before.
Yeah.
It would certainly be a budget burden that we have not figured out.
Right.
Our theater capacity is 350, and like you, we'd love to be able to fill it every night. It's unpredictable, what nights are going to sell out and what aren't. So,
but I would assume that a police detail would be needed if you were kind of, getting at the capacity of the facility, that there's not enough space for people. There's an opportunity for there to be issues, just with managing the people. But it seems like since this is a newly designed theater space, it's really intended to have the lobby area have the number of people that, can fit in the theater. So I don't see any particular issue that would drive having
I think the issue might be about the parking. I'm just guessing. But I know, especially if we had recently a library event on the same day, if something like that is going on.
Well, I understand the concern of the police chief. However, my recollection is that we as a board cannot impose any conditions on the issuance of a license other than hours of operation.
Oh.
I may be wrong, but that's my recollection from having been on the other side.
We have the very next license that has these conditions that have already been imposed through a special permit from the ZBA.
The ABCC, I think, believes or says that we can impose reasonable conditions.
My recollection may not be correct, but that raises another question: is we do actually have to deal with hours of operation for a license, and I think the applicant has
they're
to
specified here, right?
do that.
I thought that
I
it's,
don't know, but while you're looking for that, the other recommendation from the police chief is that we think about limiting the number of events
outdoors.
outdoors per year.
I think that would be sensible. I thought that there was already, I felt like there already was a discussion of this once upon a time. That
Well, there might have
there
been,
have
but not
been
with an
specific
alcohol
individual
license.
events
Right.
where the umbrella has held an outdoor festival. where there were questions about the hours that it was going to run and the impact on the neighbors.
Right, but I don't think that was maybe it was a one-day license or it
Right.
was just a,
I think that was for
Well,
the
or-
tent we
The
installed
tent.
last
I think
summer.
actually it was even maybe during COVID where it was, they were running a series.
okay. Well,
Right.
what do
We
you
installed the tent.
plan, what do you plan at this time in terms of how many outdoor events you might be having in a year?
Typically, if we have an outside event, it's under a tent. And when we've done it in the past, we either have sides on the tent so patrons can't leave the tent, or pedestrians can't walk into it. Or if it's open, we'll rope it off.
Right,
So-
and
so
how
we've
many
had
per year do you plan?
Typically, maybe 6.
6.
But I mean, that goes to the number. I mean, there might be smaller congregations that, if there's somebody who wants to do a class outside in the backyard or something.
Oh, right, but
that
that's
might
not part of the liquor license, right? Are they having a drinking class?
be- Well, maybe like a painting in Pinot or something.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
By the way, it says all products for sale will be stored and served out of our concession stand. So that's very localized in terms of where. But I don't see a time. So when is your normal hours of?
Our master lease says we can be open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Yeah.
We don't have many events at 7 a.m.
Not
A
with
typical
liquor.
event might start at 5:30 or 6 o'clock and run till 10.
Yeah.
We're cleaned up and off-site by 11.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Chris, yes.
So there've been a few points that have been brought up. So yeah, it's not ABC's requirement that we have 2 managers of records. It's Concord's requirement, and we have a primary, as Linda knows, and a backup. So we'll be sure to correct that. Kathy's been listed as the backup, and Brian as the primary. It is odd that that the ABCC application does not ask for the hours of operation, but that I would recommend that be included in the board's approval, as it requires of all other licensees in town. And the ABCC does allow for reasonable, as Linda said earlier, conditions to the approval. So the liquor license authority certification that I distributed earlier for your review before this meeting does actually have a section in there that asks for any reasonable restrictions that the board asked for. Yeah,
Thank you.
I hope that clears up some of it. Yeah.
And both Brian and Kathy are TIPS certified?
Yep.
Okay, great. Other questions from the board?
I do have a question. So the liquor, or the beer and wine, excuse me, will be served from the concession, but can it be consumed anywhere? I mean, can it be outside in the tent? It just has to originate from the concession area? Is that what I'm hearing, or am I mistaken?
No, it says stored and served out of our concession stand.
Okay, so that means it's served.
So I think that's pretty clear.
So
Well, that
for
does-
95% of our events, sorry to interrupt, it's served from the concession stand to a patron of the theater. If we have a gala or a concert or something, you can't serve 300 people from the concession stand, so they typically create a bar out in the gallery and one in the tent. So the liquor, the wine is taken from the concession stand to the table, bar, and served from there.
Yeah, unfortunately, the application doesn't, it says, it's very clear that all products for sale will be stored and served out of our concession stand.
All right, so maybe the definition of sold or something there, because at a gathering.
Served.
And served is different than consumed also. Gets to Henry's point about, well, can they take it upstairs in a studio or,
Yeah. Well,
okay.
So the number of outdoor events you said was around 6?
Maybe 6. I mean, large events. There might be smaller events that
Okay.
I'm not counting.
And, because of obviously, you're well aware of this better than us even, because of your location, so intimately involved with the residences there, I think there is some concern about the number of the events held outdoors. And so maybe we do specify a number, even if it's in the range of
Right.
6. And if it exceeds that, then they need to come back and.
Right. I think that's a good idea. And also, maybe we should have you add something about if it is an outdoor event, would the alcohol be served in the tent rather than the concession stand or whatever it's going to be?
So yeah, the applications for on-premise consumption and the Concord rules and regulations prohibit brown bag store or transfer of alcohol. The Alcoholic Beverages and Control Commission during the pandemic has had several hearings on how to treat outdoor service of alcohol. And on April 4th, they had a public hearing, and then on April 7th, they finalized their guidelines. So they do allow outdoor service to occur, permitted that it's been authorized by the select board. And there are, as I in my email to the select board, I think over the weekend, relayed the 8 or 10 points of guidance that they provide for select boards in Massachusetts to consider. So Susan, to your issue earlier, I think it's a line of sight. If they're not going to be, it's got to be on the premises. But if it is outside, it's got to be within the line of sight of where it's served from. Where it's served from. Yeah. Yep.
So Chris, a follow-up to that then, do you see that the outdoor service and the indoor for the theater productions can all be covered in this one application, or is it two separate things?
Yeah, technically it's for indoor consumption, but I think the select board can allow the outdoor consumption of liquor.
So the difficulty with the tent, of course, is that it's not within the line of sight. So the needing to have at least the manager of record, or at least the assistant manager of record present, is going to be critical, since that is a space that is not directly within line of sight.
Yeah, I mean, the Concord regulations it's either a manager of record or alternate manager of record, or someone who's been tip certified and approved by the applicant. So theoretically, the umbrella could have tips bartenders outside that are under the supervision of the manager of record, supervising that site.
Chris, did you catch the earlier conversation about the category also of this?
I did, yeah, and that's
Okay.
that's an excellent point. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the application is before the select board because there were some earlier discussions with the state legislature about reducing the administrative burden on the town for one-day special liquor licenses. So there is a kind of a feeling that this is a benefit to the town to transfer this to a kind of a permanent deal. But yeah, the state legislation that the governor signed in January was very strictly tied to wine and malt beverages, and not the cordials. Yeah.
Other questions from the board?
Well, I just wanted to summarize the conditions that I think I've heard, or do we want to wait until we close the hearing?
Maybe after we close the hearing.
Okay.
So are there questions from the public? Anybody on Zoom with a question?
Did you want? I think Detective Harrington's on Zoom, so I didn't know if you wanted to get any comments from him. He performed the investigation.
We should, I think, because.
Sure. I think one of the questions is why you're recommending that if there's more than 200 people, that the umbrella hire a police detail.
Sure. The reason for that was Chief O'Connor wanted that for the outdoor venues, and when the events would be held outside in the tented area is what we were considering that for the 6 events that were being discussed. in the,
Okay. Being sensitive to the residences in the
that's
area.
correct. And just for clarification, Mr. Baruta was listed as the Director of Performing Arts when the initial paperwork came in. His record was checked and there are no statutory disqualifiers for him or for Ms. Regan in the initial, when we received the initial paperwork.
Great, thank you very much.
No problem.
So the 6 or so large events that you might have, do you think they would typically have more than 200 people? Would they have closer to the 350 people? Or,
Closer to 350, yes.
okay,
And you've had these events in the past?
We had one 2
with
weeks
these
ago.
one-day
Yeah.
licenses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Pre-COVID, they were closer to 300, 350, where we'd sell out the theater. There would be a reception, there would be a concert in the theater, they'd move from the tent to the theater. Recently, we had our gala, and there were, I think, 220 people there that were outside in the tent and then moved into the theater.
okay. All right, I think we are,
Just one more point, sorry, I don't know if this is important or not. Typically, if we have an event in a tent, it's catered. So we don't do any of the serving, we hire certified bartenders
oh,
for that.
okay.
Yeah, okay.
I
So,
think we're ready to close the public hearing then. If
all
I
right,
don't
move
see
to
any-
close the public hearing?
Second.
Did we ask for any other public comments?
Well,
There
did-
was the only
we
thing we
did,
got.
yeah.
Okay, good.
I don't see any, so, okay.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Matt, you have any list?
Yeah, so far, what I've heard is to set as conditions the hours of operation, and I was hearing 5:30 to 10 or something. Then to limit the number of outdoor events per year to 6. To in the outdoor events to require that, I don't know, is it reasonable to require tip certified personnel to be servers or to serve the alcohol, or is?
That's
Or just
required.
under,
Required.
okay,
That's
so
required
that's,
anyway.
okay, so that doesn't even need to be specified. And then there's a question of whether we want to say if for outdoor events, if there's a number of participants of over and with some threshold, that they should hire a police detail, and maybe that threshold is a little higher, maybe it's 300, you know? I mean, where it starts to become an issue. I mean, that's the thing is, at what point does it start to become something of a problem for the neighborhood? And I think that if in the past they've had events that are in that realm, I think we probably don't want to go higher
Right.
than that.
And Detective Harrington is recommending 200 or 250.
50, right. And I just feel like if there's already a precedent in the past of running with more than that, and it hasn't been a neighborhood concern. Now, perhaps if there have been, perhaps we should ask.
Let's ask that question, because I thought that maybe they have had some neighborhood complaints, but I'm not sure. Detective Harrington, can you fill us in on that?
To the best of my knowledge, we have not had any specific complaints with respects to any of the outside events.
Okay, great.
And then for how long do we grant this application for? Is it indefinite?
I think it's an
It's a
annual.
year by year.
Okay, so
renewal.
then we could revisit this if there is an issue. So I'd suggest
Okay.
300 as a starting point.
Okay, was there any particular reason why you've chosen 200, Detective Harrington?
When Chief O'Connor was basing it on the venue in based on the paperwork that was provided, but I don't believe that Chief O'Connor would have any objection to 300.
Okay.
All right.
And one question about the first condition you said was,
The time of operation.
Oh, the second-
5:30 to 10, is that
Right.
reasonable? I mean, I think,
11.
again, when we talk about the outdoor events, I think stopping alcohol service at 10 would be prudent.
right, I'm sorry.
And then, and at the theater, you'd probably be already past
Right,
any
Yep.
intermission, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through, I mean,
Yeah.
it's likely the special events, not the planned events, but
right.
maybe if we could have 5 o'clock, would that give me a little bit more?
Well, let's call it 10.
And my question actually was the next condition, the one about the 6 large events.
Right, outdoor events per year. No, it's just outdoor events. Okay, so,
But there are several
Other
small
outdoor
events too, you said,
There
right?
could be, yeah.
okay,
I'm
so
just
6
imagining a
events
class.
of over 200 individuals? Is that, or 100? Over 100
Over
is considered a
100,
large
let's say.
event. How about that?
Okay, right.
Yep.
No
okay.
more than 6 events
Of over 100
of over
participants.
100. Okay. Carrie and Chris, did you have something?
And I
to
assume
add?
these would all be during the summer months or the outdoor
No,
events?
Well, June through October.
Okay, so maybe we should
Or, I'm
include.
sorry.
I'm
sorry, we just had one in April. April to October.
Yeah, I
I
don't think it's
we
that
need to write
crucial.
that down because,
Does it make that much of a difference? Especially since
Hopefully
there's
not.
a total limit in the number.
True,
right,
You've only got so many chits to spend.
right,
yeah, that's fine.
okay.
I don't have any additional comments. I mean, I think Mr. Wedge asked for 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. So for the hours of operation, but
5 to 10. Okay, instead of
Doesn't
5:30.
matter to me.
Okay,
It's like, it's always 5:30 somewhere. Yeah, all right.
And then the category, and then change the category of the license on the application.
right, for Walton.
Malt and-
Malton wine, yeah.
Wine and malt, okay. All right, let's see if I can,
Oh, we have another question from, cannot read who that is.
well, haven't we
That's
closed
Brian.
the public hearing?
That's our
We did.
manager of record,
Oh.
Brian Baruta.
That's Brian
Brian
Baruta. Okay, Brian, do you have any answer to one of our questions or?
I just have a question about the hours of operation, and Jerry, perhaps this is a question for you as well. Would it be wise for the hours of operation to be extend until 10:30? And that would give us, because there are on occasions a brief reception after an opening or a closing performance, and that would still give us a half an hour after close of service for guests to exit the building. And then I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to consider those evening hours as stated for weeknights, but perhaps on weekends. I'm just envisioning if there's an outdoor Earth Day festival, hypothetically, that we would like to offer service at. Those are typically in the afternoons. So is there an opportunity for Saturday and Sunday operating hours to be slightly different?
I just don't know that we're trying to encourage alcohol consumption midday at our arts facility. I mean, I'd like to, it's family-friendly events. I don't know, why would we do that?
Brian brings up a good point. We do have matinees on Sunday that start at 3.
Correct.
We don't
No,
always have concessions.
the matinee events, I can understand that. It's theater events, yeah.
And maybe we're differentiating between indoor and outdoor events.
Okay.
But, so if the matinee is at 3, then the intermission's at 4:30? I mean, so doesn't that mean we don't extend the operating hours to 3 or 4 p.m.?
Yeah, we
3
could do
p.m.?
that, right. Okay, I'm okay with that.
Okay,
We do typically offer like pre-performance service. So if our curtain is at 3, it's conceivable that audiences would begin arriving at 2, or perhaps 2:30 in order to get a beverage to take in to watch the first half of the show. So if there's an opportunity to perhaps consider 2 p.m.
Okay.
For those matinee hours, I think that would sort of line up with how schedule typically works and how our one-day licenses were typically applied for and executed.
so that would be on Saturdays and Sundays
That's correct.
at 2:00.
Okay.
And the weekdays is 5:00.
5, yeah.
Okay, I think we are ready now.
Yeah. The fire chief is in the Zoom audience, and I think he might have a question or comment.
Okay, Chief Judge.
Good evening. I apologize, I don't have video tonight. I do have one question. I don't believe that an inspection, I don't have the code reference in front of me, but we refer to them as 304 inspections. I don't believe that that's been requested, and I believe that that's a requirement for the issuance of a license.
Uh-huh.
Terry, I emailed you I did email you the reference.
Okay, well, that's, I haven't seen that email, but I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I sent it to Carrie.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that actually, well, what we could do then is, we could table this and continue it at our next meeting after the inspection's been done. And that would also allow all of these details to get written up properly on the application.
But may I at least summarize what I
Yes.
think that we've heard so that when we come back next
Yes.
time, it'll be expedited? So conditions, proposed conditions are hours of operations, 5 to 10 p.m. on weekdays, 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. on weekends and holidays, maximum of 6 outdoor events with over 100 participants per year, and a maximum of 300 outdoor participants without a police detail.
I heard a request till 10:30.
Oh, 10:30? Sorry.
Okay,
I mean, you could also make the motion subject to the approval of the inspection. That could be a contingency.
Yeah, why don't we just do that and, yeah, subject to the approval.
okay, I guess we
What's
could
the
do
name
that.
of the way to refer to this inspection?
It sounds like it's a 304 fire inspection.
Excuse me, it's a 304 inspection, and it has to be conducted by a fire inspector and a building inspector. And
Okay.
the head of each department has to sign off on the certificate.
Right, and is that just built into the 304, that we don't have to specify all those details, right? We just say it's
Correct.
subject successful completion of a 304.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Could I compose a motion? So move to approve the application for a new license filed by Emerson Umbrella Incorporated for an on-premise consumption of wine and malt beverages with the following conditions. Hours of operation, 5 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. on weekdays, 2 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. weekends and holidays, with a maximum of 6 outdoor events with over 100 participants per year, and a maximum of 300 outdoor participants without a police detail, subject to the successful completion of a 304 inspection.
Second.
By the building and fire department,
Okay, by the building inspector and the fire department.
right.
And Matt, I'm sorry, could you just read the second, where you talk about maximum number of outdoor? Could you read that section again, please?
A maximum of 6 outdoor events with over 100 participants per year,
Okay, and the second part of that?
and a maximum of 300 outdoor participants without a police detail.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
luck.
I appreciate your due diligence.
Have a great season.
Thank you very much. See you there. Open Studios is this weekend. It's the first time back in the whole new building since pre-construction.
Wonderful.
We're holding it on Friday and Saturday to avoid town meetings, so I encourage everyone to attend.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
very much.
That inspection. All right.
Okay, we now have a public hearing for Veril Farm. Hi,
Hi, how are you?
please introduce yourself.
I'm Jen Veril.
Jen Veril, hi.
I too am here because I submitted an application as well for a blanket liquor license for the season.
Is it wine and malt only?
Yep, wine and malt only. We typically have a dinner, usually a dinner a month for the summer season. So we do one in July, one in August, and then we have done in the past one in October in our greenhouse. And then we have requests for different types of parties, receptions, birthday parties. But we've been doing like not more than 100 people for our dinners. The biggest event we've done was the Stone Soup, and that was 3 years ago now. So we don't usually go more than about 100 people.
Okay, Oh, we needed to move to open the
Oh, yeah,
public hearing.
sorry. That was a big mistake. Okay.
Can open it now.
Yeah, move to open the public hearing for the application for a new license filed by Veril Farm LLC for on-premise consumption of wine and malt beverages.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Well, thank you for coming and explaining all of that. Are there questions from the board?
I just wondered, how many people do you get at Stone Soup, or have you had it historically?
The most was 350. And then I think a couple years was 225 around there.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions from the board?
I saw that you were the pastry chef at Igo Bistro in the early 90s.
It was.
And now I understand why they had such good stuff there.
Do you remember the rolls? Those were really good too.
That was a fantastic set of
I
things
like
to
the
eat.
pastries at Veril Farm too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's all followed on
Yeah,
from
yeah,
there.
right.
Um,
Okay, other
Yeah, I
questions?
mean, you've been operating these kinds of events just with the one-day licenses, right? There's not
Correct.
really a change in conditions per
No, it's
se.
not. It just would be a lot easier for you all and for us too. And also another thing that happens in the summertime is sometimes we get last minute requests for parties. And I know the schedule in the summer is a little bit, you don't meet as often. So would be easier too for us to be able to just say we can do a party for someone and not have to worry about getting down here and making sure we can get on your schedule.
Now, are you okay if we reiterate the conditions of the special permit that was granted?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you just mentioned that, because I just want to differentiate from the special permit that you previously had, and now this will be under the actual license made possible because of the special legislation. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Right, I mean, this one has a lot of pre-existing conditions
Exactly,
established,
yeah.
so it's a lot simpler, I think.
Yeah,
Not making it up, okay,
Right.
as we go.
right. Other questions from the board? Questions from the people in the room or from people on Zoom?
And does the detective or police, fire chief have any comments to add to this?
There are nothing from the police department, ma'am.
Thank you.
What about the 304 inspections? They're probably all set, I think, but I'm not sure.
Well, I think my reading of the statute is anytime that a liquor license is being issued, that inspection is required, and then we do them annually at all establishments that serve alcohol. So that's part of the annual licensing process is fire and building conducting those inspections.
Okay, so are you saying that you would need to do one in order to approve this license?
Yeah, I believe it's required.
Okay, so we can do the
But it's
contingent
interesting
then.
because, I mean, if it's required of all licenses, it almost seems like the decision almost doesn't even have to reference it. Right?
Well, in the future, I would recommend that we do all those inspections before it comes before the board, and then they just come annually. Every year they do the inspection.
Well, part of the annual renewal process
Right.
is this inspection.
Exactly.
But
Is this for the indoors at Veril Farm? I think, isn't it in the tents?
No, there are a few different
But I mean,
It's-
I don't
there's
know how
only
you
one-
do
different venues.
what kind of inspection you do of a tent.
Well, some of it's indoors, again, it's indoors and outdoors in this license.
Both inside the building and the
It's only,
tents
the only
outside?
one indoors is October in the
Okay.
greenhouse. Yeah, everything else is outside.
All right. Are there, Linda?
Well, I understood the chief to say that this is considered a new license, so we have to treat it accordingly.
Right,
Okay, will do.
okay. Other questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and Give it a whirl, Matt.
Okay. So move to approve the application for a new license filed by Veril Farm LLC for on-premise consumption of wine and malt beverages, subject to the conditions established by the special permit issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals on March 29th, 2019, and subject to the successful completion of a 304 inspection by the building inspector and the fire department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good season.
Thank you.
okay, thank you for your help, Chris. Appreciate it. All right, we are on to town meeting items. So, yeah, the print's really small. I'm looking at mine like that too. Okay.
Yeah, that one, that's really small.
Yeah, okay, so the first item is, I think we should probably meet at 12:30 at the high school in case anything changes between now and then. Is everybody okay with that?
Sounds good.
We're going to meet in the gym where we're going to have our table anyway. Okay, Carrie,
And at that meeting, we might also put on the agenda the approval of the
Already-
nominations.
already have a note of that, yep. And Carrie, if you could have somebody get that meeting posted, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, now the next thing is confirm or amend the end time of the Sunday town meeting. So last time we decided 5 o'clock was that no new business would be taken up after 5 o'clock. Since then, we've had some requests to move it later because Carmen would like to finish by Monday night. And, we don't want to go till 11, 12, 1 a.m., whatever. So my suggestion is that we change it to no new business after 6 p.m. But I'm open to, whatever the board wants to do.
Is Carmen in the audience to speak to this? Or?
I don't know, Carmen. Carmen, are you with us?
I don't see her on Zoom.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So,
I think that 6 sounds good to me, because it says, no, don't take up any new business after 6, so that,
right, so we would hope to
We-
finish by 6:30.
yeah.
So it's still a pretty long time, and actually, I forgot to ask this. Should we order some pizza or something for 12:30? Should we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, so that'll help. Anybody else want to give an opinion what time we should end?
So, I'm sympathetic to the request that's come to our attention. I just think about the audience who needs to arrive by 12:30, probably at the latest. Some of them will start coming as early as 12, depending on how they get there. And they are sitting there for all of these hours, of course, as we are. No new business before 6 could in fact mean a discussion that went on.
Till late.
Yeah,
late,
exactly, exactly. And so, I feel like we're caught between a rock and a hard place on this one in terms of trying to keep the business down to 2 days.
Right.
But at the same time, being mindful of the range of citizen engagement that we hope to have at this meeting and all of our town meetings.
Right,
So,
that's the problem. I think the thought is that even if it's 6, 7, or later at night, it's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as 11 or midnight.
Or 1.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I guess it's the lesser of evils.
Well,
so one of the suggestions that, was made was, and I think we've done in the past, is have some kind of food concession available.
Right.
That people can leave the room if they, and take a break and go get some food if they
Right.
need it, even if it's a snack of some kind.
I thought that was going to.
I think they are going to have,
Because they said you had to eat it in the cafeteria. You couldn't
right,
bring the snack back to the gym. You have to.
Okay, I don't remember that being confirmed. I heard it as a suggestion.
well, I don't know that anyone is going to be selling concessions the way they were before, but I think they're going to, Carrie, you might know, or Chris might know, that they're going to provide water and snack bars or something like that. Chris, do you know?
Yeah, there's been some discussion about providing snacks during town meeting in the cafeteria. That's really as far as those discussions got.
Just a discussion, yeah.
Okay. Matt?
I'm just thinking too, doesn't the moderator and the town meeting as a whole have some discretion, when we get to 5:30, if we made really good
Yes.
progress, people could say, okay, well, let's not take up any new articles now. Let's adjourn for the day and move on. So there is some, this isn't like setting things in stone. This
That's
is
right.
really just establishing some expectation. And I would hope that if it's looking like, okay, this was something that's going to go 2 hours, we probably shouldn't get started,
Correct.
at 5:45 PM, right?
Correct. So this is not, you're right, this is not cast in stone. So probably a discussion will occur around 4:30. Carmen may come and talk with us, or I'll go and talk with her, and we'll see where we're at. Are we about to start a very long article, or are we going to get through 3 more small ones and then adjourn, that kind of thing. So I'm willing to go along with the majority. I think Carmen's just looking for some kind of guidance, and we can change it on the fly. Because she wants to make an announcement at the beginning of the town meeting also. Sure. So what's your pleasure?
On that basis, I'm happy to extend it to 6 and hope that it'll be concluded by 6:30.
I agree.
Right, any other discussion? All right, we need a motion then?
Do we need a motion?
No, we don't, because it's not cast in stone. So we'll advise Carmen that our target will be about 6, depending, if we think we can finish the business by 6:30. Okay, we are now on to confirming the speaking assignments. So we have this table that we've been looking at for the last few meetings. Does anyone have any questions or any issues? Because I think, Susan?
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm assuming that what's going to be stated by the speakers who already have this annual town select board positions, this is what we're,
Okay, that's a really good question. If you are the backup speaker, then you might get called on to speak, and you can feel free to, basically go right by the handout.
yeah.
If you're a presenter, however, you're going to be presenting probably a PowerPoint and speaking for 2 or 3 minutes.
Really? Because a lot of times we just go up and make a little
Yeah.
blurb and sit
Well,
back
that
down.
could be it,
We say
too.
we voted unanimously to support, to
Well-
recommend.
Okay, that's a good point. If we voted to support it, but there's no presenter, Carmen is just going to say,
They,
the select
yeah,
board.
but usually,
yeah.
even when you go up to speak, you don't necessarily have a slide or anything. You
Yeah,
just
you just
say
make a
your statement.
Okay, that's fine too.
And then, because the,
Either way,
And I think it's
Which
helpful.
would be these, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's
Yeah.
helpful to stick to the script because,
Yeah.
it represents the board.
right, right. And we're going to go over that script in a minute anyway. Does anyone have any other questions about this speaking assignment? All right, let's,
And the only thing I would add is that, there are times when the town moderator may call on one of us to answer the question.
right,
And we may or may not be able to answer that question and may need to recommend someone else,
Yeah.
right, right.
No, and there can be there can be amendments, and then the board has to
yeah,
weigh in on the amendment, and
Right.
that's all ad-libbed.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the question could be, something that's not on the script.
Right.
Okay. So turning to the script, I got a few suggestions from Carmen. For example, on Article 26, the Community Preservation Committee, it said Concord Preservation Committee, and so I've made that change.
It is our community.
And the other thing that I'm noticing here is that on some of these articles, it says the select board recommends affirmative action, and on others, it says the select board unanimously recommends affirmative action. And I think we should be consistent.
Yeah, if it was unanimous, it should say unanimous.
Well, then that means for the others, I don't want to, because some of these are unanimous, but they don't say it, and I don't want to.
No, well, that's the thing,
imply-
is if you
Okay.
can see here, if
Right.
it shows which ones were unanimous, and we should just update the script to reflect the ones that were
Well, that's
unanimous.
one way to do it. If we do that, then I guess we can say, the board voted 3-1 or 4-1 or whatever it all was.
Well, you can just say affirmative action if it was a split vote. Usually, if it's a 3-2 vote, you would then indicate
Right.
that it was 3-2.
And I don't think
because
we
then-
have any
I don't think we have any
3-2
of those.
votes.
So I think basically it's either,
We have one
Unanimous
3-1
or
vote.
affirmative
No, we have 2 3-1 votes.
Yeah.
Does everyone agree? Because the other way to do it is just to say that they're all affirmative action. Or we can
I
spell
mean,
it
the
out.
thing is that if we're really behind something, we want to say that we're really behind it, that it's unanimous. I think it gives a little extra push.
All right, does everyone agree to that?
Yeah, so
So these are all going to be changed where it's appropriate?
Where appropriate, I will change them, yes.
So if it just says affirmative action, I'm sorry, if it just says affirmative action, then it doesn't matter whether it's 3-2 or 4-1 or what. Is that right?
Well, like
Or
I
should
was saying,
it be-
if it was a really split vote, 3-2, you might designate that. But I think since all of them were 3-1 or 4-1 that weren't unanimous, we just say that
Okay.
it's select board recommends affirmative action. I mean, that's
Yeah.
traditionally what I've heard.
That
And
works
if
for
it's
me.
3-2, sometimes you get a minority report.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just think the whole handout should have the same consistency, because otherwise it looked like for number 16, for example, it says, we recommend affirmative action. I think we were unanimous, but it doesn't say that, so it makes you
unanimous,
wonder, and so I think we should make them all
Consistent.
Yeah.
With what the vote was.
right.
Yeah, where appropriate, yep.
Okay. Other comments, changes on this?
So I had a couple, if I may. The select board, the title, the select board positions on articles, this is not the full list as this is included in or near full list included in the Finance Committee report. So can we title it something like select board positions,
High interest.
either high interest or selected articles?
Selected,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, we wouldn't want someone to feel that their article was low interest.
Right.
It wasn't on the list.
All right.
On number 25, I believe I'm going to have to make a small change based on some updated information, and it's complicated, so I can't do it on the fly here. It has to do with the funding sources for the ASABet and trying to make it as clear as possible.
Okay.
It would be great to get clarity.
Yeah.
Clarity is always
Yeah,
good.
it was even hard to ask the question. I was like,
If the department handout on this is available, like now or tomorrow morning, it would really be helpful to have that so that I can be in agreement.
also, this was due on the 22nd, so I have submitted this as a draft, but we need to hurry up and,
That's why I'm,
okay. So as soon as you get that, let me know.
Exactly.
All right.
And then, on Article 33, on the, I'm sorry to be so specific here, but I'm acutely aware of the climate in which this article will be debated. On line number 5, where it starts with regulations, if we could say regulations incorporated neighborhood concerns instead of responded to,
That sounds good. Incorporated.
is my suggestion.
Okay. Rated neighborhood concerns, okay.
And then on Article 38, the last, very end of the sentence in the first paragraph, has not recently invested in additional local solar projects. I think that was the intent.
Yeah,
But it just reads,
okay, yeah.
Say that again?
not, the very right there, it has not recently invested in additional locals.
Oh, additional local, got it.
Or new, or
Yeah,
You know, new might work. I'm having
new is better.
I'm having a
That's fine.
problem with this page,
yeah, so that's good.
which, when you're finished, I'll,
Yeah, okay, good. I'm done with that.
okay.
Thank you.
So what I'm trying to do, I think it was your suggestion, Linda, and it's a good one, that each article fits on only one page. So like on page 1, for example, we could start talking about Article 24. There's plenty of room at the bottom, but then it's going to go over into the next page.
Yeah.
So this page 4 is very crowded, and if I need another line, and the whole thing isn't going to fit. And that actually means, Matt, that when you write up number 37, you've only got that much room. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Because otherwise, we have to go on to, these are going to be back to back.
Yeah.
We have to go on to another page just for a few lines, page 5.
Okay,
and
well,
that's-
there are tricks of the trade.
Well, we might have to
yeah.
do that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And related to that, on page 1, Carmen recommended that we put the 5 names of the select board at the bottom on page 4, and they're definitely not going to fit, but I might be able to fit them like in the top corner of page 1 or the bottom corner of page 1, if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
I know we can change the font.
Yeah, well, no, or also you can reword things just ever so slightly.
I've
if
already
you have
done
a-
that, believe me, and I've changed the left and the right margins, and I've already kind of messed with this a lot. But
Okay.
Article 24 is really long, and there's no way it's going to fit on this page, no matter
Okay.
what you do. Anyway, okay, so that's a lot of minutia that we don't have to
Just
worry
reading today
about.
that William Lloyd Garrison, the abolitionist, was a typesetter, and he, instead of actually writing down his articles, would just typeset them straight from his head.
Wow, all right. That's how we used to type our papers in high school, I think, right? Way back.
Ultimate of hunt and peck.
Typesetting is-
Okay. All right, any other changes to the handout? Okay, we are ready for Article 18 and then Article 37. So for Article 18, for those of you who haven't heard, this is the Concord Public Schools article. An agreement was reached between the schools and the Finance Committee. And they're agreeing to a number of $43,010,486. So I recommend that the select board support that, since these two groups have agreed.
Do you have the number in front of you so that
The
when I make
number,
the motion?
yes.
So, thank you.
The other thing I want to note is that in the beautiful FinCom book, which we've just received, really nice job. At the time it was printed, they had not yet come to this agreement. So it says the FinCom recommends no action on Article 18. They are going to be putting together an addendum handout.
The addendum is posted online.
Wonderful. Okay, any discussion about Article 18?
Well, the only comment is that the reason that we were withholding our endorsement was because this agreement had not been reached.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now that it's been reached, I think we can support it, and we
Correct.
should.
Okay. Move to recommend affirmative action on Article 18 in the amount of $43,010,486.
Second.
All in favor?
I-
Wait a minute, you have
I wanted
discussion?
to, I wanted to make a comment. I think this is noteworthy, this disparity between the recommendation from Finance Committee and the School Committee, and it's not going to change. It's not going to change unless there's a change in the methodology or the contract negotiations, given that if the average increase is 5% and the levy limit increases 3%, has to come from somewhere. And this year they came and said they wanted to change that number, but that, I think, has to be looked at differently going forward so that the levy, the Finance Committee recommendations are by and large upheld, except for some extraordinary circumstance.
The negotiations will not be before a town meeting, will
No,
they?
I understand that. I'm saying the next,
Appropriation will be whatever is appropriated regardless.
however, I know the contracts are 3-year contracts. The average teacher salary is $100,000. $104,000. And we can continue to have that. My understanding is CCHS has the best contract in the state, the richest in terms of financial. Carlisle is second and CPS is third. And if we want to maintain that status, if that's important to us, then that's a cost. But with all new the resources we spend townwide on the buildings and the staffing, the buildings are sunk costs, but the town has to decide because there are so many other, there are other projects and benefits that employees want and other expenses. But you know what? Not my problem.
But thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good point, because it's a multi-year problem. And we've solved it for this year, but going forward, we need to be mindful of it.
That's a problem every year, not just a multi-year problem. It's
Yep.
right?
Yeah, but
The pressure's building.
the pressure's building and
Pressure's
the
building.
share of the pie, if you look at the pie chart, the CPS share is increasing.
And that's because they're 80% of the total budget, and 80% of their budget is payroll.
Exactly.
So-
That was my point.
So, I mean, that's
That
just
was my point.
automatic, almost.
Okay, all right.
We have a
So
seconded motion on
we
the
have a
table.
seconded motion for affirmative action. All in favor?
Aye.
And we appreciate the school committee and the finance committee coming together on this. It was difficult. Okay, next is Article 37, the checkout bag charge. So Linda sent me some questions and attempted to get on the Zoom meeting, but we don't know what happened with that.
So luckily, earlier in the morning, Concord Can had a forum and just reviewing 3 of the articles, so I was able to see the full presentation there.
Right.
And the petitioner had put in a lot of work, I think, to finalize his presentation. And it was well received by that group.
And then when we had the Zoom meeting, basically, all of your questions were answered. There was one, I'm wondering if, Joseph Stein, are you with us on Zoom? Because there was one question left at the end.
I am. Good evening.
Oh, great. Thank you for joining us. Have you had a chance to talk again with Marie Foley in the Chamber of Commerce?
So I did reach out to her. She did say that the Chamber of Commerce didn't have an official position on the article. but she said that the members are thinking it over and that, those who are registered will vote, will show up at the town meeting. That's really all she mentioned. And she said that she'd be happy to reach out to the select board and discuss her thoughts.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other questions for Joe or discussion on this article before we vote?
Well, yeah, I had a question, which is to our town manager about being designated as the authority here. So what are your views on that?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know that it's going to be me, but it will be me. It will be me or somebody, and we'll figure that out if this article is passed.
Okay. I mean, I think it's sort of like the default,
Right.
the buck stops somewhere. There it is.
Right, but it says or designee, so
Yeah, right.
that
So it
gives
gives
a
some
leeway.
latitude.
Right.
Okay.
So you're reminding me of an additional item on this. I believe the last line referred to, and Joe, please correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, but I think the last line referred to this is effective 3 months after the town vote. The problem, and is it not?
Oh, so it'd be,
So it has to go through
it would be
3 months after this legislation passes at the state level. That's the way I read it.
Yeah, well, I think it,
Well, how is it
I thought it
stated?
read
3 months after its passage, it says.
Right.
So,
passage, is that what it says? Okay, good.
Okay.
Or at least that's in the warrant. I'm not sure I saw that in the final motion.
I don't think that, I mean, this is highlighting changes that were made, and I'm not seeing any strikeouts in that area.
Okay. Good, we can go on.
Okay. Other questions, discussion on this article? Are we ready to vote? Looks like.
Okay. Move to recommend affirmative action on Article 37 as amended.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, so that's a 4-1 vote. All right. So Matt, if you write it up tomorrow, that would be great.
Give it a shot.
All right, thank you. And now let's see, what are we up to? Article 19. We have Brad Herbert Nelson with us. I'm not sure if we're expecting an amendment on Article 19 at this point, or we're not. Brad, do you want to give us the latest?
Sure. So I'm Brad Hubbard Nelson, 221 Nashawtuck Road. And we proposed an amendment to the capital funding for the school to postpone the installation of a new gas boiler. And since then, the superintendent, Lori Hunter, has said that she's not opposed to that they're going to be discussing it at the school committee meeting tomorrow. So it may well be that the school committee embraces it, which is absolutely the best solution. We aim to be collaborative as opposed to confrontational.
Okay, so if the school committee endorses it, then you will not be offering an amendment?
I think that's correct. Now, would they do an amendment to their own article, or they would just change the wording of it? I don't know how that works.
They may not have to change anything. It depends what the motion, how the motion reads. Let me just see here. Because it just says remodeling, construction, reconstructing, extraordinary repairs.
The description says a high-efficiency condensing boiler and controls at the
In the
Alcott
in the box, right?
box, yeah.
Right. Do you know,
Explanation.
Carrie?
They will, because of they'll have to print a handout for this because of the number of words in the motion.
Okay,
And so they could put an explanatory box
okay,
in their handout. And I think that would be helpful.
good. All right, so, it seems to me that the board, well, we have two choices. One, we can take a position on an amendment now that we may not need to have, or we can hope that the school committee and the amendment people have a meeting of the minds tomorrow, and if they don't, then we can discuss it on the floor at 12:30, which is what I recommend. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Brad. Okay. All right, Article 46, we have a revised motion to take a look at. It's in the packet. And we may have Mr. Posner with us on Zoom. Not sure. Okay.
Already voted this, right?
Okay, now what we voted, it has changed substantially, in that the new motion says, Mr. Posner moves that the town recommend the select board allocate $75,000 from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So it's a recommendation to the select board now that so before it was an appropriation that town meeting was going to make if this article passed.
Well, I think that our statement about it partially says that this article did not go through the rigorous capital process that everything else does, and that unless it did, we wouldn't know how it ranked amongst other projects, many of which were either short funded or not funded because the funds are limited.
Right.
So that doesn't change the fact that the article asks for 75,000 changes, the possible source, but it doesn't require it to go through the process that all the other capital projects go through. So that would be my comment.
But it's not really, it's not really a capital project. It was that they were taking the money from another capital account. Is that right?
Well, they've changed that. Now they're recommending that the select board take the money from the infrastructure bill that is going to arrive at some point.
Well, do we accept town meeting votes that recommend that we do certain things? I mean, is that? part of the process?
It's a common practice, especially with
That we
petition
recommend
articles.
That we,
Yeah.
and then we were free to either take that recommendation or not.
Correct.
So,
I mean, but if town meeting were to vote overwhelmingly in favor of something, and we're elected officials,
We would,
it'd be at our peril not to,
Right,
presumably,
not to.
but yeah.
it's not a great barrel.
Well, just saying.
yeah.
We don't
On
know how this is
104
going to be
million.
voted, it's, yeah.
It doesn't change my initial rationale about not going through the
It doesn't, mine
department and
either.
town capital process.
I do think this amended article is better than the previous one, because I think last time we were presented with a kind of almost an impossibility, which was to allocate funds that hadn't yet been dispersed, that weren't available yet, right? The infrastructure funds wouldn't be available till next fiscal year.
Oh,
Nor
well,
would
you know
these.
what? It's been changed so many times. The last one, the one we did vote on, the funding was from a fire breathing apparatus.
breathing
from-
apparatus.
from
No, I
a-
thought that had been revised right before we voted.
Okay.
And that was the problem, I think, was that it was, the source of the funds had become very blurry. Now, I think there's clarity about the recommendation, so that like, if those funds were to become available in this next fiscal year, we could then choose to allocate those funds. But I think, for me, I find that from a policy perspective, that goes against what I've been recommending for ARPA, which is, that the we take that through our standard process, right? Those funds through our standard process to the extent possible, rather than just earmarking projects that we particularly like to do or want to do.
And that's,
And I should say, on a personal level, I think this is a worthwhile project. But I'm just saying, as somebody trying to run a budget process and a funding allocation process, I can't support this approach to doing it. I would rather see it come back as a prioritized infrastructure project for the town's infrastructure program. That's what I want to see.
and that,
Or as a CPC recommended funding project, which I think it's in the right scope that it could become one of those. So both of those. So I don't think it's anything against that. So I would have to vote against this still, but it's not because I don't think it's a worthwhile project. It's because I think that the way to get it funded needs to be part of our town process. I mean, certainly town meeting is part of our town process, I should say, but we would be making this move ourselves later if we did this.
Well, I actually support this because it gives the select board the chance later to decide whether we're going to.
Whether we want to do it?
Yeah, and having already heard from town meeting satisfies the,
That they want to do it, if they
Right.
decide they want to do it.
And
If they don't,
If they
then-
don't, that's a clear message as well.
Uh-huh.
And
Well, that is interesting.
I don't know.
Well, because in fact, it is a town process, town meeting.
Right.
Town meetings,
Right.
voting, that's,
Well, I think.
The word of the people.
Regardless of how we vote, if town meeting is overwhelming, or a majority of town meeting supports it, then that's a message to us too.
That's
Yeah.
right. And that's right. I mean, the most important thing is going to be that what town meeting votes, not what we say.
okay. You've convinced me. I'm changing my vote. Okay.
well, there was some objection also to the substance of it, in the sense that it focused on the engineering and grading issues rather than the environmental and recreational issues. And there was, I think, some justified feeling that if we describe the project in those terms, it would help to determine the result,
Right.
the outcome of the study. So I think there is a reason not to necessarily jump at this, putting aside the financing issues. And the only hope I saw.
But I think that the wording on that also changed, right? Consistent with the town's sustainability principles,
But it still says drainage and
natural
grading.
resource protection, that's been added as well.
I think the most important thing they changed was now it says feasibility study or needs assessment. And what I really like about it is that the dialogue really needs to happen. This is a very high interest,
Area, yeah.
emotional article, and we need that dialogue. And whether you call it a needs assessment or you call it a feasibility study, whatever, we need a lot of public input on the natural resources and the grading and the drainage and all of it.
But that, as we also discussed, that could be broader than just this particular, it's
True.
looking at trails, all of them. I mean, looking at as part of a bigger picture.
Well, that's a really good point. And so what might happen, even if this passed, it might happen 6 months, a year from now, that the select board says, well, we don't want to do it this way, we want to do the whole picture. So we would still have that option,
Right. But we could have that option in either case.
Right.
Does it still have the provision that it be done under the supervision of the town manager?
Yes. Or his or her designee.
Well, that's hopeful.
Okay. Well, are we ready to make a motion on this?
I'm ready.
Okay, move to recommend affirmative action on Article 46 as amended and presented in our packet this evening.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, 4-1. All right. That concludes our town meeting items. We are now going to talk about Hanscom rerouting of traffic, and I may have jumped the gun on putting this on the agenda. This may turn out to be a 1-minute item. Carrie?
I think 1 minute may be overstating how long it's going to take, so we'll get back on track with the agenda. So we did receive a copy of the information that is in your packet. It was provided to us and to Linda as your representative to the HATS committee, but not provided to us directly as it was to the towns of Bedford and Lexington, because this work, the proposed work here, impacts the gate on Hartwell Ave, which is in Lexington, and there's no direct impact to Concord operation. So we were given a courtesy notice through our membership on HATS, but not a direct notice and not a direct review process. And I did review this with police, fire, and DPLM, and none of those departments have any comment.
I was wondering when I was looking at the map. Good.
Yeah,
Well,
it
that's
doesn't
quick.
seem to be in our vicinity. Yeah.
Right. But maybe it would have had a traffic impact, so it's good that we checked. And it says near the end, they're looking for our input. So I guess we don't have any particular input then. Okay, any other discussion on this?
No.
All right. Next item, PEG Access Franchise Renewal Process. Carlin Reed is with us. Thank you for coming, Carlin.
My pleasure. I'm also being joined, Carlin Reed, Chair of the Beg Access Advisory Committee. Also joining us on Zoom, I believe, is John Harris from the town's budgeting and purchasing director. Yeah, it looks like John's there too. John, you're going to back me up if I say something wrong, okay? All right.
Correct you or back you up?
Yeah, actually. He worked me over on this RFP. What we're doing here, we're looking at the request for proposal for the cable consultant to help the town get the best terms for the renewal of the agreement of the Comcast Concord cable TV franchise agreement, which expires April 21st, 2024. I worked with John on this RFP. It follows the town's basic format for RFP, but it's coming to you folks, which is a little bit unusual. It's coming to you because the select board, not the town manager, is the entity that actually signs the franchise agreement. So you folks have the ultimate authority and decision on whether or not to renew Comcast's agreement. This is pursuant to a state and federal regulatory statute. And if you really want the citations, I have them right here, but I don't think I need to read them in the record. See me afterwards if you want them. The funding for this process is going to come from the PEG Access Fund. That's why it's there. And we already have a set amount of funds set aside. It's contained within the enterprise budget for fiscal year 23. So we have some funds set aside for that already. The RFP sets out a draft timeline, and this is a draft because I don't know what the consultant's going to recommend. For example, in Carlisle, they also did some focus groups, and I don't have that incorporated in this particular draft. But that may be something else that we add or move things around. This timeline envisions a couple of opportunities to examine this whole process, 2 public hearings, meeting with the select board twice, one of which will be during an executive session to discuss the actual terms that Comcast proposes for the agreement, and then 6 meetings with the PEG Access Committee group, which I'm proposing to be the review team, not just the committee members, but also the liaisons from the select board, from Minuteman Media Network, and from the Council of Aging if they've appointed another person. That's the group that normally meets and that would normally take a look at the proposals when they come in, would recommend whom to interview, would do the interviews, and would make the selection process, if that's what the select board chooses to designate to this review committee the authority to do. If you folks want to take part in any of that process, feel free to come, feel free to do it, but that's kind of why you have our committee created, was to help this process. The last thing I want to add before I wind up is to remind you how important this process is. We're budgeted to get about $300,000 a year from Comcast, from the Comcast PEG Access fees over a 10-year period, which is what we're expecting the contract term to be. That's about $3 million. Now, that's what that's the 4.8% PEG fees. Comcast gets the remainder 95.2%. My math isn't that great. That's roughly $65 million over that 10-year period. So it's worth a lot of money to them. And that's just the cable revenues. Over the same coaxial fiber, Comcast also offers its Xfinity Internet service, which costs a lot more than cable service. This contract is supposed to cover just the cable revenues, but there's a lot more at stake. So that's why we spent time drafting up this RFP, going through the process. It's going to take about 2 years, but we're going to have a good product. And our target to wind up the whole process is March 28th, 2024. Our contract expires a month after that. Okay, John, did I miss anything?
I said you did a great job.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Matt?
So what is budgeted for just this consulting project?
Okay, for fiscal year '23 in our enterprise budget, we have $12,500.
I see.
As I understand, Carlisle is spending a bit more than that over the term that they've had it. They've been working at it for about a year and a half now, and they don't have a committee to assist. It's just the town manager doing it with one of the select board. They're spending a little over $20,000. So what we have right now will easily take us through the first fiscal year. And if we do need to do another supplement from the PEG fund, we'll look at that for fiscal year '24.
Okay.
Other questions? Linda?
Yeah, Carlin, thanks for all the work on this. I was struck with how tight the timeline is at the end of this.
Okay, again, this is a draft timeline. What section in particular are you concerned about?
Well, you're doing a lot of, you've got the consultant coming in, you're doing focus groups, you're preparing for the negotiations, but then the negotiations don't start until pretty late.
No.
Okay.
There's a formal process involved, but there's an informal process that we'll be engaging with Comcast and actually finding out what we need before then. The formal proposal will come in December 21st, 2023. That's the formal process. So under the formal process,
Formal proposal from,
from Comcast,
Right.
that's the formal proposal. That's when normally we would have just 4 months to negotiate, but we're going to be talking to Comcast before then. We just need to know what to be thinking about, because we need to do a needs ascertainment survey, a townwide survey to find out. We need to have these public hearings. And part of our committee is structuring itself already to say, okay, we'll need to drop to the new middle school. Is that already covered under our existing agreements, or is that something we have to ask for? That sort of thing. So it looks like a short time. It really isn't. That's why we're starting out 2 years in advance.
and, I know you've got a great deal of experience in this area. Do we at least have some idea of the range of different, from contract to contract?
The range. You mean in terms of dollar amounts?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see. Last time we did this, I think we asked for roughly $225,000 in capital improvements and a 4.8% PEG access fee cut, basically. And that 225 was basically to create the studio at the high school and some other repairs here, some other capital improvements. So there's a capital component of it as well as the actual PEG fee that we get allocated for use of the public right-of-ways.
And their base, I assume, is based on the percentage of subscribers.
Right, and currently we have 4,400 cable TV subscribers.
Yep.
Probably have more internet subscribers than that, but we've got 4,400 at this point.
What are the issues, other than the revenue split, what are the issues to negotiate?
There's
just generally.
Right now, there's a sleeper that I've been watching in looking at some of the other agreements that have been finalized in the last 3 years, because that's what I'm looking at. And there's a redefinition of what gross annual revenues is, because our 4.8% is 4.8% of the gross annual revenues. Our current contract, it's fairly extensive. It includes advertising revenues, for example, not just what's paid in. And that is a big chunk. That's like about $100,000 every year of ad revenues. In some of the contracts I've seen that have been finalized in other towns where they didn't really have a cable advisory committee, that definition has been narrowed which means that the allocation portion is narrowed, so the total amount that's coming is narrowed.
So that's a revenue split issue. Are there other issues?
Yes, right now, whether or not the PEG channels should be carried over a single definition or high definition. On your TV set, most of the channels above 100, I think it is, are in high def, a very fine resolution. But right now, Comcast, in almost all negotiations I've seen so far, not everyone, all of them, have dummied down the signal from a high definition down to a single definition, and so it's not very clear, sharp, or crisp. And that's just for the PEG channels. It's part of the negotiation, and I know that that is an issue, for example, that's being discussed in the Carlisle agreement. They have a separate agreement that they're working on right now. So those are two that I can think of off the top of my head, is the definition of gross annual revenues. We can talk about the 4.8 versus up to 5% we can get. The other is the single def, high def.
So aside from things like amenities, like connections to schools and studios that already exist and so on, they've already made their capital investment. In the system they have in the town of Concord. They have the cables,
right, and we make some,
switches and so on.
we continue to make some capital investments. In the enterprise budget here, we're investing another $58,000 for that.
Well, what I'm thinking is that since they've already made the major portion of the capital expense to provide the service, we have a great deal of negotiating strength in this, don't we?
I would think so. Plus, Comcast gets more out of it than we do, so they have a reason to
They're not going to
negotiate.
take their wires and go home, are they?
Well, in theory, you could say we will no longer have Comcast in town. However, that would trigger a certain litigation stance, and there are certain, under the federal rules, there's only really three reasons you can actually tell a company to take their wires and go home. And I would not advise it at all. So what's happened is the Comcast rep, and it's Greg Franks, he's come here before. He will have, I think, 10 different towns to negotiate contracts in the year 2024. So we are one of 10 people, 10 groups that he has to deal with the negotiations. That's part of why it takes so long, is they're dealing with a large number of towns in these agreements.
And they all use consultants.
Some do, some don't. I know of about 5 law firms that specialize in this area. We're going to be putting an advertisement in the Concord Journal looking for it, and I think we're going to be reaching out to the Mass Municipal Association and Mass Access, which is the PEG Access organization, to find good groups to help
So the
us.
consultants are attorneys?
I know of 5 consultant law firms, yes.
So when I look at the scope of work and think if it's a law firm doing the work, I mean, $12,000 won't go far enough.
It depends. It depends on the hourly rate and the number of hours. It also depends on how much work my committee does.
But I mean, yeah, there's like, 6 these focus groups and all this stuff. I mean,
That's for year one. It's a 2-year thing.
This is a 2-year process. So if
so
we,
$12,000 per year for 2 years
is
that-
24,000,
I
and that's
see. So-
that's less
so, okay,
than
well,
what?
that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
All right.
Well,
I just, hey, if you can,
if we can,
it's
great.
going to be the first negotiation win if you can do that. Okay, great.
Well, anyway, that's what we're expecting to have happen on that. And so what I'm hoping to get is some agreement that for who's going to be on the review team. That's the main thing to do, because we've got.
I would like to volunteer to be on the review team. I'm very interested in this, and I've been on a review team in Sterling when I worked there, so I'd like to do it. But if another
Don't let me
select
stand
board-
in your way.
Okay, we could have more than one select board person, though, on the review
And that'd
team
be
if
fine, too.
someone else is interested too.
The plan is on June 2nd, during our regular PEG Access meeting. That's when we would be looking at the proposals and figure out whom to select to interview. So that's probably kind of the key time.
All right,
for this process.
I also want to ask Carrie if you think any staff people should be on the review team besides John Harris. Is there another staff person as well?
I would recommend someone from Minuteman Media Network from the studio. I kind of incorporate, because they're one of our usual liaisons, so.
Yeah, I was surprised not to see that in the earlier proposal. Yeah.
Right.
I have it, I hand scribbled in here of the people who should be on the review team, so. Yeah, but that would definitely be one of the necessary, because they're the ones who knows what they need, basically.
Right, right. Anybody else?
We certainly could provide an additional person if you thought that that would be beneficial. Right now, we're pretty thin. So I'm not sure exactly who, but if you said you needed somebody with a particular type of expertise, we certainly could provide somebody.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Who do you have in your scribble there as maybe not by name, but just the ideas? You said COA liaison and.
Oh, we usually have, at our meetings, we usually have a liaison from the select board, of course, from the Council on Aging, because they
Right.
have designated someone there, and from Minuteman Media Network.
So
Those
they're
are the
already
three folks.
represented.
They're already there. They're the
Okay, so that
usual
makes sense.
suspects.
Okay,
That's,
great.
that's the group.
Okay. So it would probably be those three plus,
Plus the 5 PEG access.
right, plus John Harris.
Yep.
Okay.
That seems good. Seems like enough.
Is there any other select board member that would like to be on this?
We're going to have a chance to give you our opinions along the way, are we not?
Oh, I suspect so. I will be at your beck and call. Just put me on the agenda. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Carlin, it looked like you wanted us to delegate the decision on the consultant.
I don't think I didn't see anything in, the revised motion document took that out.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think it's
isn't
necessary.
it-
It's up to you folks on how you want to proceed.
Yeah, I don't think that do we have to do that?
we don't
I don't think we have to
that.
do that. Yeah, I think
You've got a review
you're good
team
to
that'll be
go,
looking at it.
right? I mean, the town manager signs the contract, right?
Oh, for the consultant?
For the consultant, yes, the town manager would
Okay.
sign it.
Yeah, I
All
think
right,
it's
that's
all
fine.
set.
Okay, great.
And our goal is to have the consultant selected by July 1st.
Right. I mean, I guess
All right.
you were probably thinking of the enabling a legislation that put us as the
No,
decider.
I was looking at an email from Carlin from a while back, so
It could have been a better worded email, that's for sure.
it's fine. It's out of date. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We now turn to the 250th update and committee charge. I understand Henry's been very busy getting us some great people on that committee.
Well, we have, what's this?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know. My hearing aid has been whistling, maybe that has something to do with that.
Just speak right into the microphone. though.
Okay. So I've been working with John Arena, and we've been reviewing people who've submitted green cards, and we have nominated 4 additional people to serve on that committee that are on your agenda for tonight. What my intention, and these are, I think, well-connected people who know the town quite well and know other people in the town, and and I've also provided them with the updated charge, which contains the amendments that the board has adopted. And what I am planning to do is to meet with those 4 people and John and me, which would be 6 people, which would be a quorum of the initial 9 members of the executive committee, immediately after town meeting, to discuss with them a structure for the activity. And one of the things I sent out to all of the new candidates was the roster for the 200th, showing all the committees and subcommittees.
Yeah.
There's hardly anybody on that roster who is still alive. but there actually are one or two. And to talk with them about their suggestions about additional members for the executive committee, and to start talking about leaders for the subcommittees, and also to put in front of them what they think might be desirable for changes or additions to the charge. One of the things that I think is important for us to add to that charge fairly early is a provision for honorary members. I think getting honorary members on this committee will be of great value. It will,
What is an honorary member?
somebody like some of the people who have either connections or influence, who are not able to give full-time commitment to the committee, which could be like people like historians, and people like legislators, and people like representatives of the National Guard and the National Park, who would not sit in on meetings necessarily, but would add some, what can I say, some gravity to the whole undertaking, without my mentioning names at this point.
Okay, so they might not be Concord residents. They won't,
might, in many cases, they would not be Concord residents.
and they wouldn't be voting members.
They would not be voting members, but they would be honorary members,
Okay.
like our member of Congress, for instance.
Okay.
And I think that would be my feeling, that would be of great value to us, to build up a kind of a very substantial looking body of people through members and honorary members who could help us with contacts, with invitations to people who we want to have come to the event, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's so I think we're on our way, and of the people I sent an email to over the weekend saying that they had been nominated, they responded with great enthusiasm.
Great. And they look like
And
really
they were
excellent.
not
Great
intimidated.
candidates. No.
They were not intimidated, but they were enthusiastic. And so that's a good sign.
Right. Okay. Discussion from other board members.
Great choices. Thanks, Henry, and to you and John for wading through the substantial number of cards you received. I understand.
Well, I mean, now we're getting to the point where people are getting in touch with me and saying, what can I do? And I'm adding them to my list. And you know what the first thing is I say? File a green card.
Volunteer card.
Volunteer card, yeah.
Oh, and you know, the funny thing is that somebody who asked today said that she could not find the committee on the list, and that's because it has such a strange name. It's something like it's the Concord Executive 250th Committee. It starts with, it doesn't say anything about anniversary or 250. It's Executive Committee or something, you know, a name that.
Concord 2025 Executive Committee. Yeah, that's what it says.
Yep.
So nobody would think to look for it under executive.
Yeah. I'm interested in having a discussion about what our process is going to be going forward. For example, on one extreme, we could say, all right, Henry, you go with the 6 people that you have now, find 3 more, become 9, and we'll nominate them and we'll appoint them and we'll make them fit in these groups that we have in the membership. Or Another extreme would be that everybody on the select board
I would welcome suggestions and advocacy for people that members of the board would like to see on the committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But because of the it's difficult to do this as a committee in public because you don't want to discuss the qualifications of it.
What's that?
That you can put it on your lapel and you wear the mic part in your pocket.
Yeah.
And then I walk out of here with that on, and then
Well, then you can, you can keep
and
talking.
then everybody hears everything I say all night, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, looks like we've got the Zoom connection back.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Linda, did you have a comment?
Well, thank you for all the work that's been done already. And, as you talk about, or I guess your question about how do we deal with, the vast number of people that will eventually come on to the subcommittees and so forth to make all this happen. I do feel that, once the executive committee meets and, begins to identify their own structure and process, that the numerous individuals that they identify for all these committees is going to come through our regular nomination process. I'm assuming that in terms of.
Correct, but my question is, how will we determine the other 3 members of the executive committee? And then, we already have a pool of many people who've applied for this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So,
I have an Excel spreadsheet with about 50 or 60 names on it.
right, so my question is everyone comfortable allowing Henry to make these decisions with John and the others? Or does the select board